All right, friends. So, Texas, I want to give you your stats. And as I give you these stats, what I want you to think about is it's only been 2 months and 11 days into the year. So, just keep that in mind of what an incredible year you're having and the work that you're putting in. So, I've got Texas at 87 agents right now, 87 agents. You guys, these 87 agents, and you have to remember, like probably 20% are new in the last probably 6 months. So these 87 agents have 209 pending units. That means you guys are helping right now 209 families be under contract and you're delivering the dream of home ownership. That is a new record. And what's really special about this, in a market where everything is in multiple offers, you guys are skilling up and winning. You guys have $82 million in pending volume. That's a new record. Listings, 225 listings that you're carrying right now, right? In a market where listings are hard to come by, you guys are going after them and getting them, right? And then listing volume, you've got 57 million in listing volume. You're representing 260 buyers. That's a new record. You have already closed 150 units. That is 2.17 houses per day this year. That's $51 million in closed volume. You're averaging a price of $340,000, and your GCI is $1.5 million. Now, why am I even talking about GCI, right? Because it's revenue, and it's not like we don't walk around talking about GCI, right? But here's why. It means that $750,000 was already made by you guys in the first 2 months and 11 days of the year. This is in months where teams hardly do anything, right? January and February are usually kind of crappy months for most teams, most agents. You guys went out and made $750,000 in income in your pocket. Last year, this exact week, you guys had only been at 390,000, right? So you guys increased your paychecks and are making 48% more this year. So I just wanted to acknowledge how far we've come in one very short year in the middle of the pandemic, winter storm, all the crazy. So there's only one update that I want to give you guys. There's a big event coming up, right? If you guys kind of maybe have not checked Facebook recently, Fred said, who we had on here 2 weeks ago, he's doing 1,000 dial day with Place nationwide. I think last night there was like 74 agents signed up. It's where each agent who opts in will do 1,000 dials. And together we're going to do 100,000 dials in a day. So here's what I think. I think if you've been looking for a reason to make a major dent in your lead gen, or maybe you're looking to prove something to yourself or see what you're made of, or you simply like having the energy of 100 agents on the same journey with you on that day, you're going to want to sign up. And I'm going to put that link in the chat. Okay. It's March 24th and it's 1,000 dial day and it's completely optional, but a lot of your friends are doing it. So with that said, let's talk about today's topic. It was the most requested topic that you guys requested last week. And those of you guys who request topics, I love that you do that. Investors definitely represent an opportunity for us to increase our sales, but also most of the time it's multi-units. Like one investor is not going to just buy one. Usually they buy multiples. So it's a good leverage of your time. Casey has been our investor expert, and he's a fourth generation investor, right? His parents were investors, his grandparents, his great grandparents all own portfolios here in Central Texas, not somewhere in Massachusetts or California, or, this isn't like millionaire Silicon Valley kind of money. This is like real deal normal people, which I think is really important because he's going to be real with us. He got his license thinking he was going to help investors, and he's represented dozens of investors and transactions. So what I'm excited about is not only does he manage 30 doors, not only is he a full service agent, director of productivity here in Austin, but he definitely has a passion to help other agents and other people just harness that wealth building power of real estate investing. So he's got an entire slide deck ready for you guys. If you zoomed out, or if you are zoomed out of all these Zooms, this is the time I'd come back in and listen to Casey. Casey, take it away, give us all the content. And then guys, we're hoping to have about 10-15 minutes for Q&As. So as you start hearing Casey, if you've got a Q&A or question, actually, put it in the chat and we'll make sure we get to it. Sound good? Let's go.
Yeah, if you have a Q, I've got an A. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we are talking about how to talk to investors. Now, the way that I kind of intended this to go is we're really talking about that first investor convo, right? Like intro to investing, right? Like once you've worked with a couple of investors, you kind of know how to do this thing. But getting into working with investors can be really intimidating, especially for a lot of our new agents. But some of us, we've been in real estate for a really long time, and there are things that we've kind of fudged our way through, but never really learned the terminology, never really had a strategy for investors. It was just kind of like as they come, we kind of fake our way through it, right? Fake it till you make it. So for me, I wanted to kind of bring in some more intentionality to this, right? And so my goal is just for you to walk away with kind of how I approach this investor conversation. And I also want to make sure that we have time for you to ask me questions on how I would do something, okay? So let's jump in. Today, we're going to talk about how to know an investor's motivation, how to know their strategies. You need to know the numbers, right? And the terminology around investing, how to qualify them, close for an appointment, and then a few more things that we're going to talk about. So first is knowing someone's motivation, right? When we're talking to an investor, the first step is to be human, right? Their investors are people. And so the goal is to build rapport and make sure that you're showing yourself as an agent of value, right? There's a lot of agents out there that would love to work with investors, but don't have anything to bring to the table, or they at least don't feel like they have anything to bring to the table, right? And so what we can do oftentimes to add value when we don't really know where to go is ask good questions, right? And then actively listen to the answers to those questions, right? Like tactical empathy, right? Listen to what they're saying, say what they're saying back to them in their own words, right? Like that's how you really get on someone's good side. We also call that building rapport, right? So start by digging for motivation. Think about if you were having a seller conversation, right? Like what has you wanting to invest? What's important to you about investing, right? It's the all about you conversation at the beginning of our listing presentation. Investors want to make sure that you're focused on them, right? And what you'll find is investors love to talk about investing. It's why I do this power up, right? Like I love to talk to investors about investing, and they love to talk to me about it, right? So just ask good questions and it'll come out. Find out, why they're investing. Is it because it's just kind of the right thing to do, right? You're going to talk to a lot of C personalities that are that way. Is it because they want to see like generational change, right? Like that's me, right? This is a generational thing for me. And so I want to have something to leave to my kids, right? When I'm investing. There's a bunch of different reasons why someone wants to do that. But once you're connected to that, you're really in with an investor. And it's at that point that you can really LP mama and have a normal buyer conversation, right? But I've got this warning here. Don't assume you know what investor means to them, right? Everyone kind of has a different strategy. Everyone has a different motivation. So don't assume you know, and let's ask good questions. Let's move into the strategies. And these are kind of the biggest ones that I run into. First is buy and hold. This is probably what most people think of when you say investor. You're thinking someone's going to buy rental property to own, right? And probably the most often one that we'll see around Texas, because we have awesome real estate values and awesome rents, is cash flow buy and hold, right? And so this is where you're going to want to be able to explain to someone the benefit of owning a property that a tenant is going to pay the mortgage every month, right? And you're going to make money every month on that property. The numbers that you need to know for this, first off, your rent multiplier. This is going to make you sound really smart if you're working with an investor who knows his buy and hold, right? Or her buy and hold. Monthly rent over purchase price. That's your rent multiplier. And some people are looking for like 1% when you're doing that. That's like the golden rule. Hard to find, but there are markets where we can do that. Cash flow is just the money left over after paying your expenses every month, right? So effectively, it's just monthly rent minus expenses. That's an easy way to calculate that. And then I want to introduce something to you. If you're not aware of the Burr method, this is a way that someone can buy an investment property, do a renovation, get a renter in there, and then refinance and pull cash out so that they can then take that cash and go buy another investment property. And this is what a lot of people who listen to the podcast Bigger Pockets, or they're on the forum Bigger Pockets. This is a really big thing. And so you're going to run into a lot of investors who are educated on the Burr method. So it's smart for you to know what that is. The other kind of buy and hold in a market that's not really easy to cash flow, like in Austin or parts of Dallas, right? Is appreciation buy and hold, right? And so the point with appreciation buy and hold is you have cash. Inflation is reducing the value of your cash every year by 4%, right? And so having your money in something that is an asset that is increasing every year, even just by appreciation, is protecting your money. So this is more often we see this for people who have already built their wealth and now they're just trying to protect it, right? Cash flow buy and hold is like wealth creation, whereas appreciation buy and hold is more like wealth protection. And so depending on where someone is, if they're asking you your opinion, that's kind of the way that I think about it. But it beats inflation, even in a slow market. You want to do like a long-term pro forma with these and do like every year, this is what it's going to appreciate for. And also be aware that some people, especially in a market like Austin, like we've seen 15% appreciation the last couple of years. And before that, it was like 8 to 12% appreciation in certain neighborhoods, right? So there are people who will even break even or pay every month for an investment like that because it's going to grow at like double what a stock would in that market, right? So keep that in mind. The next thing is flipping. We hear a lot of flippers. They're like centered around our investor conversations. I will say that while a flip is a way to create capital, right, to be able to then go and buy more properties or do more flips, there's no residual benefit to flipping. And so if someone is asking your opinion, this is really trading time for money versus building a business with residual benefit, right? So this is like a foray into investing if someone is new to this, but there are flippers that we're going to work with, and this is their thing and they're sold on it, and we need to be able to help them, right? So a term that you need to know for flippers is ARV. They love to throw this out there. That's after repair value, right? And they're going to throw that around. You need to know about it. Something to think about that you can add value to when you're doing a flip is doing a rental analysis, right? And just saying like, hey, if the bottom were to fall out, we could at least use this as a rental property, right? You can add value there. They'll feel like you're managing their risk and they'll feel really good about that. When you're finding properties for these, find the areas with like top of market prices, right? The neighborhoods where you're going to have top of market prices, and then zoom in on those in your search, and then go find like the lowest price properties that are listed in that area. That's kind of where you want to be. It's even worth prospecting an area or driving for dollars, right? Going and finding the properties that are, they have disrepair, right? Or deferred maintenance. Those are the kind of properties that would be great candidates for flips. And in a market where we have low inventory, that might be necessary in order for you to help a flipper. There's also move up investors. You may not think about these people as investors, but there's people even on our team who they've bought multiple homes but never sold one, right? And that's a great way to build a portfolio. Ben says, don't sell real estate. Oftentimes I'll say, don't sell real estate unless you're buying real estate, right? I think that's like the one thing, especially after 25 years or whatever. There's a 27 and a half year depreciation schedule. Get your depreciation out and maybe you need to move that investment up. But anyway, listen to Ben, don't listen to me. I would say that you also need to know about your different financing options when you're working with investors, right? So there's like conventional financing right now. Typically we're having to put 5% down if they're like crazy qualified. We've seen 3% recently. But if you're buying an investment property, you're going to have to put 20% down doing conventional financing, right? And then after your first one, it's probably 25%. So make sure people are aware of that, and make sure you know your lenders who are giving good rates. Rates are going to be a little bit higher for an investment than they would be for a normal residential purchase. There's also hard money lenders that are like the legit loan sharks of the real estate world, right? Like higher interest rates, 5-year balloon, probably more like a 15 or 20-year amortization. This is like a short-term solution, in my opinion, right? To be able to purchase a property, and then eventually you'll either, if you're a flipper, you're going to sell it, or if it's for a buy and hold investment, you're going to refinance after getting it renovated and getting a tenant in there. I think those are the two best ways to use hard money. But there's other ways. And then private money, like if you know someone who's got cash, as you're getting a private loan, or there's people who are professional private money lenders. If you are fortunate enough to know one of those, connect your investors with those guys. And then there's creative financing, right? Loan assumption, seller financing, rent to own. Don't eliminate those as options for someone, especially if they already own multiple investment properties, because like most investors, they want to have as few loans on their record as possible, right? And so these creative ways keep them from having to originate a loan. Now, let's talk about the numbers. I know a lot of us feel like, man, the numbers, that's like for lenders. But when we were in real estate school and they taught us about fiduciary duty, they used the acronym OLD CAR. The A stands for accounting, right? So I'm going to challenge you today and say you need to know your numbers. So the first one that I want to talk about is cap rate. This is an objective way to compare property performance, right? Or risk, right? Like an 8 cap versus a 9 cap. A 9 cap is going to be riskier, but you might have higher cash flow. If you compare 2 8 caps, it really is apples to apples, right? So this is a way that investors are really comparing properties. It is not it's not a way to know how a single property is going to perform, right? Just knowing something is a 9 cap isn't really going to tell you anything about this particular property. You really need to run the numbers. But the way that that's calculated is net operating income. So if it effectively, it's rent minus expenses. I've got an idea of like kind of how I calculate this at the bottom of the slide, and then divide that by purchase price. And I might do that not on list price, but what I think it would actually sell for. So that's cap rate. And then return on investment. It's really smart for you to be calculating returns for your investor clients, right? Like, I think that's really smart. And you can really hone this in on like their particular strategy and what they really want out of an investment. There's 2 ways that I think are smart to calculate investment. One is cash on cash, which just means annual cash flow divided by the total cash invested. You're just looking at cash in, cash out, right? And then classic ROI, which is going to be much better for your appreciation investors, is going to be your annual return, which is cash flow plus equity divided by total investment, right? And that's the classic ROI. And that's the one that we're typically using in Austin. But like when I help people invest in Waco, and when I invest in Waco, I'm looking at cash on cash because that's more of a cash flow investment market. So I'm not saying you need to do all your numbers by hand, and I don't. There's a lot of tools that we can use. There's a BKCO mortgage calculator, right? We love that thing. It's great to know what your monthly payment is going to be and give you some information there. I also use an app called Carl's Mortgage Calculator. I highly recommend that. I got that from another investor agent years ago. The calculator.net rental property calculator is awesome. And then there's also proprietary analysis spreadsheets, right? I've got one that I can share with you. I'm going to share my email with you at the end of this presentation. And then here's a bonus. It's not a calculator, but Rentometer or Rentometer, I've heard it both ways. It's a great way for you to find out what things are renting for in an area, especially if your MLS doesn't have rental on there. But here's an idea of the kind of things that you can, like these screenshots, if you take a look at this and send it to your investor clients, like you're going to look like a freaking genius, right? Like that's the whole point, is you can share all of this information without having to do the math by hand. This is the calculator.net calculator. And this is a preview of the proprietary investment analysis spreadsheet. Shoot me your email via email. Ask for this and I'll send it to you. But let's talk about like the actual conversation, right? Once we've established all of that and we've built rapport, we feel like we know their motivation. Now we want to dig into qualifying this investor, making sure they're not a Jimmy, which is someone who thinks they're an investor and they just want to waste your time because they've been to some guru's, workshop over a weekend at the Radisson, in North Austin. But ask people what their investing strategy is. They should have an answer to that, right? Ask them what kind of deals they usually go for, right? Ask them if they're partnering with people, right? And then calculate their returns according to their strategy. Know how they want to make money, and then you can actually analyze deals based on that. And then ask them about their timeline, right? Ask them what kind of cap rate they look for. If someone says, what's a cap rate? This is probably someone you're going to have to educate, right? And you definitely have to qualify that person. But just know that the higher the cap rate, the more risk they're going to be taking on. And the lower the cap rate, the less risk, right? It also means they're likely going to be making less return on an investment. But anyway, it's just important for you to know that higher cap rate is associated with higher risk. And then ask them about their email, put them on a list, and then LP mama the crap out of them, right? Like know all of the details you would know on any other buyer, and then set up a call, a consult, get coffee, right? Like you want to sit down with this person face to face and talk about investing. A couple more points. I know I've gone a little past 15 minutes here, Adelina, but 1031 exchanges, that's a way for someone to sell a property and not have to pay capital gains yet, right? They can defer capital gains. So that's something that you want to become familiar with. Property management, know some property managers in different areas, people who specialize in multifamily, single family, right? Learn about partnerships and maybe even get, like when you're talking to investors, find out when you're asking about if they partner, find out if they're open to new partners, right? You might be able to bring a few investors together to buy a property when you would have had to wait a few years before any one of them was going to buy an investment property, right? And then know your vendors, right? Your contractor, your lenders, all of those folks, they are really going to help you in building that investor list. So set them up on a list, send them inventory every week. Definitely make sure that you are sharing that with them. This is my email, guys. I'm Casey at benkinneyteam.com. Shoot me an email. If you want that spreadsheet, let me know. If you want to talk about investing, obviously this is something I love to talk about. And I know that we have a Q&A right now. I am going to stop sharing my screen if I can. And then let's jump into Q&A.
I can get started while people are thinking of their cues. What do you mean by higher risk or lower risk when you say cap rate, higher cap rate, lower cap rate? What is it exactly is higher risk or lower risk? Like, what does that actually mean?
Sure, good call. So when you're looking at a higher cap property, it's probably going to be like a Cclass versus Bclass property, right? So we're talking something that's a little bit older, or maybe wasn't as, it's not going to be a luxury property, right? And then it's going to have likely, because of that, the tenants that are in there will just by default need to be less qualified. They're going to be paying less rent, likely. And so it's one of those things that you're taking on the variable of the tenant being, inconsistent or unreliable. And you're also taking on, like, it's a different neighborhood, right? This isn't something that's going to be on like the nice side of town, likely. If you find something with a high cap rate that is on the nice side of town and has super high qualified tenants, I would suggest that you look further into the numbers, right? Because that's like, oftentimes that's the dream, and it may be too good to be true.
Okay, so on that topic, thanks for bringing that up. Let's see, I don't know, Casey Davis, she's got a client and she's, this guy is looking for an investor. She finds something on the nice side of town. What should she be asking for from that listing agent? Like, should she look at rent rolls, expenses? Like, if you were doing this and you were coaching Casey Davis, what would you be telling her to ask for?
Good question. So yeah, once you've done everything in the slide deck, right, and you're in with this investor, now you're going to go and have to run the numbers on an investment property. Likely they're going to send you something, right? They're just like other buyers. Hey, I saw this property, and hopefully they saw it on MLS or on Realtor or something like that, or it came through Brivity and not on anyway, LoopNet or something like that. I would say you want to call that person, call that investor, ask for the story, or the listing agent, ask for the story. And then you want to know you want the rent roll, or sometimes a rolling 12, a pro forma, right? Like you just want to know how it's performing. And so you want them to send you the numbers. And I often ask that way. It's like, do you have a rent roll, a rolling 12, a pro forma? How are you communicating the numbers? And oftentimes a listing agent will respect you more if you're asking that way.
Got it. So if I'm Casey and I'm calling you and you're the listing agent, I'm going to say, Casey, I got an interested investor. I'd love for you to send me over, a pro forma, a rolling 12.
Yeah, P&L.
P&L. Okay.
If you have a P&L on a particular property, that would be awesome.
Got it. How often do you find that listing agents have this, and how often were they just a regular agent and they just had a friend who's like, hey, I'm gonna sell it, and they don't have any of this? Is this kind of
great question? So it depends on the market, and this is another point to the risk on higher and lower caps, right? So if something has a property manager, it's a higher quality or higher like higher value asset. Chances are they'll have all of this. If something is like self-managed and it's like someone's only investment property, they might have a spreadsheet that they can send you over that they keep track of for their taxes, and they might not, right? They might just tell you, yeah, the tenant's been good. They missed their rent in March, but they're making it up. And, like sometimes you just got to live with that.
Got it. Any other questions that you guys have? I still have a few, but I want to make sure you guys have your questions.
I have a question on inventory. So Casey, you mentioned getting them on a list, like an investor list, and sending them inventory every week. But in most of the markets, or at least for San Antonio, like most deals on the MLS are not deals for buy and hold, unless they're variable on their down payment, which I'm sure is a conversation you're having because I know you. But outside of just putting them on a search like we would a normal buyer that's not as intricate, how are you doing that? Finding inventory, and also, if you are using the MLS, which I'm sure you might be, breaking that down. Do you just look at areas where you already know rent could cause cash flow? Do you got to do some research? Do you got to spend some time doing it? Like, what's your advice on that?
Yeah. So yes, the answer is yes to all of that, Brandon. I am using MLS for a lot of these. Sometimes I'll even call it, though, like when you're naming the search, I might call it the unicorn search, right? Just because it's so hard to find. And I'd tell them, hey, if this comes through in your inbox, you need to like jump on it. Immediately call me, right? I'm setting up MLS to let you know. And if I haven't called you yet, you call me. So I am looking for areas where I know a certain square footage under a certain price can result in cash flow. And I'll do that in certain neighborhoods in just about every market that we work in. And that doesn't happen very often, right? So what I'm looking for, like, get on every mailing list that you can with like wholesalers, get on every Facebook group, like Investor Underground, right? And pay attention to the team off markets. Anytime you talk to someone and you think that there might be some upside for investing, like you want to make sure you're sharing that with all of your clients. And by the way, sometimes when you're sharing with your investor list, you might not want to put the address on there, right? Some of your investors, they're able and willing to cut you out, right? So when you're sharing this inventory, I would say something more like, hey, North Waco opportunity, duplex for under $120,000 or something like that, which I think would be a much better thing to share than, hey, go check out 2500 Morrow, because I do think that they could cut you out. But to answer your question, Brandon, yeah, I think you need to do all of that. you need to know your research, or do your research, know your areas. And the same is for appreciation investments, right? So you need to know what areas are appreciating the fastest and find out what's the lowest you could buy a property in that area, and then search for properties under that. Right? And so that's what your unicorn search would look like in a high appreciation area. And you also like circle prospecting, driving for dollars, those kind of things are how we create inventory.
You used to, Casey, you used to even like call for sale by owners and used to like door knock people. What would you say when you made those calls? Because you always had investors. I know this about you. So like, what is like, how would you approach that? Just give us a quick thought on that.
Yeah. So the way that I would usually approach that, in like when you're driving for dollars, oftentimes you'll see for sale by owners, and you definitely want to door knock them or call them, and just say, hey, I represent a network of investors that may be able to bring you exactly what you're looking for, and I specialize in helping people maximize their equity and their convenience. So whatever we can do to make this as easy for you as possible and meet your goals, I'd love to do that. You have 15 minutes where we can sit down and talk about it. And so you're making it clear that you represent the investor, but you want to get more information from this person. And then oftentimes when I do have that conversation, it's an investor inventory conversation and a listing conversation, right? Where I'm doing a multiple choice close at the end of that appointment, and saying, so I have these investors who could buy it for this, or we could go to market for this. What would you prefer? And so that way you're at least like showing people, that you're being honest and open. And I've had a lot of experience with people saying, going to market seems like a lot and you're offering this, so let's just do it.
I see a question from Alicia on 1031 clients who are usually pre-approved to get like just a regular mortgage, right? And then they find a property that's like 5+ units.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had any, like, do you have anyone that you would recommend in the Texas area for a commercial loan? Because if you're not aware, when you have 5+ units, it has to be a commercial loan. For everybody on this call, it can no longer be a residential regular loan. Right. Anyone that you've ever run into, or anybody on this call, if you've run into anybody, if you can pop it into chat so we can build our commercial lender list.
We want to have a list for sure. There's a guy named Robert Randig who's at Round Top State Bank. I've worked with him. There's a lady named Regina. I can get people her contact information, and she's with Eagle Bank in Georgetown. I have worked with people on commercial loans, and typically we're talking like 20% down, but this is like 20-year amortized, probably a higher rate, right? And it might even have like a variable rate, right? So after 5 years, it might go up. So just be aware, if someone's getting into that, they need to be extremely well qualified and able to do that. So, but if they are qualified and they can do that, we have people to connect them with. And also, guys, if you have like a favorite lender and you've built that relationship already, ask them who they recommend. You can help them look like a rock star, because chances are they have someone they refer people to all the time. So that's how I found Regina and Robert. Regina was recommended to me by a client, and then Robert was recommended to me by Regina. So that's how I would recommend that you do it.
I love that. Shaista had a question. She says she's been sending her investor client off-market properties, and he's sketched out by them. I'm not really sure what that means. Maybe you do. But any way that you recommend handling that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I think people like this is.
By the way, what she means is she doesn't trust her yet, right? Not sure if they're real, properties, etc. How do you handle that?
Sure. Well, it seems too good to be true at first, right? The best thing that you can do is just like in your consultation with an investor is level with them and just let them know by the time a deal gets to MLS, it's not a deal anymore, right? It's the same with like if someone's trying to send you inventory from LoopNet, right? Like LoopNet is where deals go to die. And so like by the time you can search this, you don't need me anymore, right? Like we need to go find properties that no one knows about, because you make your money in investing when you buy. And so if someone comes across this kind of inventory, it's really gold. And like just showing the upside there, I think that's kind of the carrot, right? But then there's also like just helping people understand that this is how people buy investment properties all the time, right? Like this is our standard for investors. If you're not willing to buy off market, you need to be willing to buy A-class property at a premium, right? And this needs to be more of an appreciation hold for you. You better be super qualified and have already built your wealth, right? Otherwise, you got to do something out of the norm, and that's exactly what it takes in order to get like cash flow or for this. I know this particular investor. We talked about him, and you know, for him, it's kind of a mix, right? He needs like $200 a month cash flow, and he wants to do it in an area with like 6 to 8% appreciation. That's the holy grail as far as I'm concerned. That's what my portfolio looks like, right? My 30 doors, right? And so that's what I would recommend. I bought probably 80% of my portfolio off market.
Casey, can you share your screen once more and go to that spreadsheet that you had, and if maybe you can do a quick like just kind of like walk through, because some people may never have seen some people will be really up to date with this, and kind of maybe anything that you want to talk about on here to
Sure.
walk through it.
Yeah, so this is a great spreadsheet, and it's one I got from Adelina. I really love it. This is a really great way to just kind of plug and play to see an analysis of a property, and I just want you to see like some of the numbers that come into analyzing a property, right? So that there is the purchase price, but we sure can't stop there, right? So what it costs to rehab a property, get it up to the point where you're going to get a tenant in there and a qualified tenant, the best qualified tenant, hopefully. That's a huge concern. And then monthly income, that's like the rent you can expect, right? This isn't necessarily top of market rent, guys. Like be prepared to rent for a little bit less than top of market, so that this vacancy rate can be lower, right? This is 5% of the time this property is going to be vacant, right? So if we do 5% of 365, that's 18 days a year that you're expecting someone to move out, and then you got to get someone else in there, right? And so for 2.5 weeks, we're expecting this to be vacant. That's costing you money as an investor, and that's something you need to be aware of. That gives you your gross operating monthly income, and the gross is awesome because that's what you actually take in. And knowing the difference between gross and net is really important too. Be able to throw that number around. Gross just means before you take out expenses, and then net is after you take out expenses. Property tax, insurance, maintenance budget. This is a property that is, you can see they're spending $31,000 to rehab this property. The maintenance budget is going to be pretty low. For someone like me who might spend 10 to 15K to get something up and ready for an investor, investor special kind of thing, this is going to be closer to like 1% a year for maintenance and upkeep. Utilities, you might be like, especially with multifamily properties, right? There might only be one water meter or one electric meter or something like that. You need to be prepared, or the investor needs to be prepared to handle the load for that, right? So you want to throw that in there as well. Closing costs, they have to pay that. Any points for a loan, they have to pay that. Down payment is likely going to be 25% unless it's their first investment. This is a great rate for an investment. You're probably going to see them higher now, right? Since they just went up. 30-year loan, 8% appreciation, right? And then that's what's going to give you all of these numbers, right? So the down payment here, this is 25% of the loan amount, and this is eventually, going to give someone an idea of what their cash flow is before tax, right? That's kind of the number that a cash flow buy and hold investor wants to see. And then you can see the cap rate, cash on cash return. This is great. This is what I was telling you about the actual amount of cash in and amount of cash out. And then you can throw in like principal payment added. This is with forced savings through principal payments, right? We talk about this on our buyer consult. Same with appreciation, right? If you couple all of these together, this is your classic ROI right here. 32% return on investment on this property, and your total investment was $77,000, right? So if you've got $77,000 that you can make 32% on, like, you're doing way better than any other investment, right? Like, this is the power of real estate, guys. If you were to go take $77,000 and put it in the stock market, you'd probably make 7-8% on like a great year, you know, and that's really over 10 great years. But on real estate, you can make 32%.
I love that. Go ahead, Brandon, you're up.
Hey, I have two questions. This is awesome information, and I have two questions, but this one on the cash on cash return with principal plus appreciation, is that assuming an exit after a given amount of time? Like, is that assuming a sale after a certain amount of years?
So this is annualized, right?
Annualized. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, oh crap, can't click. It goes to the next one. So yeah, this is an annual projection.
Okay, cool. And then question number two, because we love scripts. I've noticed a lot of times over the years, there's two trends of investors, like you alluded to, one that thinks they're an investor and one that's actually an investor. And then one takes obviously way more time than the other. So what would you recommend for newer agents or agents newer to working with investors when it comes time to ask for the business formally in writing? I'm talking about a buyer's rep here, and you get that age-old adage of, oh, I don't sign those. I just work with all the agents and whoever finds me the deal. How do you differentiate where you spend your time, Casey? If you have someone that's like, yeah, I'm ready to go, let's sign right now. You're my guy. You're going to help me find this deal, versus someone else who might say, hey, no commitment, just whoever finds me the deal. Or is there a difference in your mind?
So there is, depending on the qualification of the investor, right? Like, you need to, when I say qualify the investor, this is exactly what I mean. And I'm glad you brought this up, because this is the nuts and bolts of that conversation. When someone is, you know, this is their first investment property, and they seem like they're really hesitant to commit, then you need to have this conversation with them and say, you need someone in your corner who's willing to be a fiduciary and willing to share the numbers with you and run these numbers. Otherwise, you could really get burnt. If you're just trying to play the field and see who's willing to share the best story with you, or who's willing to go find a deal, you're kind of like playing the odds as far as what kind of agent you're going to get. It's a much better idea for you to work with a good agent and then go find a great investment together. So that's what I would say to someone who's they've never done this before, right? And could be a risk for you as an agent. If they don't go for that, then that's probably someone you just want to put on your list and send them properties. And if something comes for that, great. But it's not worth spending a ton of time on someone who won't commit and has never done this before. Now, if you've got someone who has a portfolio of dozens of properties and they buy 4 or 5 properties a year and they won't commit to you, that might be someone that you need to build trust with and eventually earn the right for them to commit to you, right? I've sold investment properties to those kind of investors, and eventually they see the difference between working with you and working with another agent, right? But you're right. Like, there's a lot of us who have been in this for 4 or 5 years. We've seen that, like, legit investors, once they talk to us and once we're willing to share our knowledge about these numbers and use these terms that I've shared in this power up, oftentimes they're just like, oh yeah, this guy is different. This girl is different. Like, I want to work with them. So educated and experienced investors oftentimes will be even more likely to sign a buyer rep than someone who's not as someone who's higher risk for us.
Love that. Thanks, Casey.
Awesome. Casey, like, have you had any pre-built in investors within taking advantage of our network?
Yeah, I have. I actually, for a couple of years before starting like productivity coaching and now being director of productivity here, like, my bread and butter was helping real estate agents and investors from around the U.S. That were either EPs in our Ben Kinney team network, or people that I just know from like other investors buy in like North Central Texas, right? So I've had a lot of people who, when I shared a deal, especially through building relationships through Place and the Ben Kinney team, they jump on it. And the cool thing is, like, we know these people, and when they say they're interested, like, this is someone that we can trust that they're going to work with us.
I love that. I love that. Any parting words? Anything at all? 1 minute mark.
I would just say, like, get out there and work with investors, right? This is something that this could be 2 or 3 extra deals a year for you, right? By actually taking these conversations. Or this could be, like, for me, it's still half of my business, right? And once you get used to seeing the power of just the power of managing wealth in real estate, right? This is like addictive. Right? Like I am like, I cannot stop helping people build wealth in real estate because it is like so foundational. 80% of first generation millionaires in the United States build their wealth through real estate, right? And we are the keepers of those returns, right? Working with an agent like us is the difference between becoming one of those and not becoming one of those. So I see it as an awesome responsibility, and I see it as an honor, and it's something that I'm, taking advantage of for my family. And it's, I grew up in this too, right? So I see it as something that was given to me as well. But guys, this is the power of real estate. We talk about helping people manage their wealth in real estate. It's why our buyer guide starts the way that it does. This is an awesome responsibility, an awesome opportunity. So go take advantage of it.
What's your cell phone number so people can plug you in as a resource should they need you?
Absolutely. Get a pen, guys. It's 512-970-4612.
All right.
512-970-4612. And it's Casey with a C.
We'll take it. We'll take it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Casey, for this morning. And we will we'll go ahead and send some of these resources out so that you guys have them. We'll do it probably by this afternoon. And then also I popped into the chat the link for the call day that's coming up. If you want to join and hang out with the top of the top of the top in Place Network, it'll be an exciting day. I saw a lot of people are doing it. People that are like, they're not newbies and they're doing it. So I think some people just want to try it out and see if they still got what it takes. Because I'm telling you, these newbies are putting in the work. So it'll be good. That's March 24th, you guys. March 24th. All right. I will see you guys later. We'll shoot out an email, and I appreciate you guys. Have a good rest of your week. Thank you, Casey.
Oh yeah. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you, Casey. So good.